Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And it's part 2 of the Jubilee battle series. This time we're going to take on the boss battles. As you can see, my scores are quite good, considering that there's bots in front of us, right? So technically I'm rank 2 on both fights. Will I maintain those? Probably not. The sweaty tryhards still have to really give it a fair shot. But for now, it's good enough, because there's also a bot in the rank, so now I'm technically rank 2 everywhere. So, we're doing pretty good, and I believe that will conclude most of my Jubilee stuff, even with almost 400 tickets left. It took, like I said, it took a long time to record yesterday's video on the normal battles. A long time, so that's why we have so many. But we're going to go into boss battle 1 now. Let's take a look at the ranks. So, Bot, 162-2, and then me at 159-4, and I can't do it any better, because Nature has a full 120 Konosuba team, and there's nothing I can do about that. But definitely, we got a 10k gap in between myself and the next person down, so I've got a team that works. So without further ado, let's check it out. Alright, so this is the max power team that I ran for Inferno 3 Beatdown Battle, and it's going to translate well into Jubilee, because it's almost the same exact kind of thing. So we've got Rimuru. Again, apologies if you don't have Rimuru, but you're going to not get a great score if you don't have Rimuru and Megumin, minimum. I have 2 other teams, and they are alternate, and they get progressively worse, but if you're missing Rimuru, you're just going to have to resign yourself to a mediocre score at best, and that's just the way Jubilee runs. So, apologies in advance. But this is the team, buff, orb change, buff, and the rush. We're bringing Violet again, even though she has type disadvantage, because her buff is actually more impactful damage-wise than the new Swimsuit Shizu by a considerable amount. I didn't actually take Swimsuit Shizu in here at all. Like, I didn't even try it, because I knew from the stream when we pulled Shizu that Violet's buff is just better. So it does make it a little bit harder to play around alts, but it will help us increase our score by a lot. And then Megumin and Shizu are here because they're damage dealers. And this is an AOE focused stage with 3 enemies, so Shizu is actually going to do really well. So we're going to rock this initial run at double speed, because I don't want to sit here for 10 minutes explaining how to stack a team for you. And definitely the next couple clips, we are not going to sit here and watch the entire thing, even at double speed, because it's fairly obvious how you stack. Run blues, get protection gauge, keep using blue orbs. But here, ideally, because we don't have someone that can swap the alt into a blue, we have to play around and make sure we don't get alts too fast to where we're running into, I only have 5 orbs to send for the next 6 turns. It's not really how you want to run this. You want as many stacks as possible, so that's why we swap Megumin out there for Violet, because I don't really care about a Violet ult, and she's only going to live in the back anyways. So this will just help us prolong the amount of time that we can get full 6 orbs, and as much points and as much protection gauge as physically possible. And then once we get to turn 4, turn 5, then we really start pushing the Megumin ult with Aqua skill, getting those pierce resistant stacks on, and making sure that we have the EX ult and the Shizu ult, which are the most important things. So every single unit on this team has multiple roles, right? Kazuma is orb changing and buffing. Aqua is buffing and rushing the ult. Violet is converting to blues and giving that ult resistance down debuff. Megumin's the DPS, the orb changer, the ult buffer, and then Shizu is a secondary DPS, the fire buffer, and then for herself, the AOE debuffer, because she does have that little 15-point skill that puts a little tiny debuff on the enemies, but it does help her out because she is an AOE unit, and she is fire, so she will end up doing really good damage. Also, a good display of why we brought Violet, because she was able to swap those 2 Cosmo orbs, and then we can use Megumin's orb change here, and everything's hunky-dory, and we would have gotten her ult. No, we rushed her ult now, so we're three turns in. Now we have the Megumin ult. We have a Shizu ult. We're going to hold those in the back. There are instances where you will get an extra ult for somebody. Go ahead and use that. I would not use a Shizu ult because it's kind kind of difficult to get her ult again, unless you're really rushing it with Aqua. But the primary focus is using Aqua to get Megumin's ult, and then holding her in the back. That way you don't have to interrupt the rest of your hands full of blues, hopefully. That you can just have Violet and Kazuma up front and let them handle the bulk of the orb-changing duties, while Megumin and Shizu are sitting pretty, not interacting, not taking away from your full 6 hands, and allowing you to get, again, as much protection gauge as possible, like this right here. So that worked out fairly well. Unfortunately, it does mean leaving Violet in the front. She doesn't do good damage. She takes a lot of damage, because she's type of disadvantage, but if no one hits her, then we're fine. So, here we go. We have the Aqua ult. We're going to use that now, and we're going to play around to where we can send 5 orbs, 1 ult and 4 blues. So we're going to bring, I believe, Megumin in for Kazuma to take that 1 orange. Yeah, after we use his orb change. There we go. So we're going to, again, rush the Megumin ult. We'll get her EX ult here with this 1 orb for her, so she'll be ready to go. But you do have to ensure that Megumin is up front on the second to last turn, because your team is full of buffers, and the only unit that doesn't have to be up front for her to work is Violet. So if you have like Shizu, Kazuma, and Aqua up front on the last turn, Megumin's going to miss a buff, and that's not what you want, because you'd have to use the Kazuma buff, you'd have to use the Aqua buff, you'd have to use the Shizu buff, and one of those missing on Megumin is huge. So you have to make sure Megumin exists on your front line when you're on your second to last turn. Therefore, you can guarantee that everybody, or at least her, will get all the buffs. And you can have Violet up front, that way you can then fully guarantee that Shizu will also get the buffs. Or you do this and bring them both in and call it good. But unfortunately, I am 2 points shy from having enough to use the full buff. I miss out on the AOE debuff by 2 points. Really, really unfortunate, but it is what it is. So we'll use the ult resistance down from Violet, we'll bring Kazuma in, use his, and then we'll bring Aqua in. If you can manage to get 3 ults by this turn, great. I have another clip after this I'll show where I do get all 3 ults. And so we'll slow things down now. 100%. There we go. Okay, or not. Okay. Go back. There we go. Okay, so now we're ready to go. We have everything, minus the AoE debuff. So Shizu hits 800, over 800k on Guy, because he has the couple of stacks of resistance down, 700k on the other 2, and then Megumin hits 3.2 million damage right there, down for the count, but it's the end of the fight. So that's going to give us a very, very, very good score. But it can be a little better. You can... I'm missing 1 buff, technically. You could have a 3rd ult in the back, which we're going to show you right after this. So let me bring that clip over. Alright, so here we are. We have the perfect setup. Violet didn't have an orb, so I could bring Megumin in so she could live here. Shizu's come in with this orb. We have an Aqua ult in the back. So what we can do here is we can send these 4 orbs, and that's going to give us enough points to use every single buff. And I have 3 ults go out at the same time, plus 1 more stack of Rimuru. So this is about as good as I can get it on this run. So this will be the run. So yep, Kazuma has an orb, thank God. It would really, really suck if he didn't have an orb. So we've got... Kazuma's buff is going to go... All the buffs are going to go onto our primary nukers right here. Megumin and Shizu. That's great. And then Aqua will come in with her own Pierce buff and then the ult buff. The fire buff won't affect her. She won't get the attack. She'll benefit from the defense down and her own Pierce buff, though. And this extra stack right here. So we're going to be looking mighty fine. So let's do ahead this final stack. And then we just have to make sure not to cock this up. Okay, so... let's use the Kazuma buff. Alright, defense down on everybody. And then we'll bring Violet in for Kazuma. And then we'll use her debuff. Alright, and then we'll bring Aqua and her ult in. And then we will use the buff, the buff, the buff, and the buff. Here we go. This is as good as I can get it. We're going to send the Shizu ult first because that increases our pierce power, or no, it lowers our pierce resistance actually. Then we'll send the Aqua ult, we'll send these 2 green orbs, and then we'll end with the Megumin ult. And this should be my best score that I can probably get, because Aqua is a higher level than Kazuma. And the only way we get it better if this was like a Megumin orb or something. But here we go, this is it. Let's see what we get. So 970k on Guy. Ooh, 363 right there. Alright, 14k, not great, but 121k on that orb, and then 3.2 million damage. 6.8 million damage total done. I have seen one of the sweaty tryhards get 6.9, but he has a full 120 team, and I just can't compete with that. So this is the best that I'm going to get right here. 159,465. There we go. So that is what happens in a perfect run. Now let's test out some not so great teams. And I'm really sorry if you don't have the adventurer team. Okay, this is the second team. We're going a little bit more budget friendly, I guess. This is a team that assumes you at least pulled Rimuru and Megumin, but not Aqua and Cosma or Swimsuit Shizu. So we're going to use EX Albus, Fount of Wisdom, Light 3.0 Milim, Trainee, and then OG Fire Benimaru, because he has, a very cheap attack buff for himself for 30%. You can use that, here and there. Milim's buff will overwrite that, but if you have an ult for Benimaru early, you can use that buff and send it and just get a little bit extra damage. Trainee is here to convert, also to help rush the ult on Megumin, just like Aqua. It's just not quite as good. Milim again has the attack buff, but also she's kind of like Violet, where she can come in and change her own orbs. It's just that the attack buff is not nearly as good as the ult resistance down, but good news is she doesn't have type disadvantage. And then Albus will cover our green orb changes and also give us the pierce and the pierce resistance down. So let's go ahead and start this up. We're going at light speed again, so it should be, it's going to run the same way. It's built for a Megumin orb change, so you don't need to worry about that, because this team has Megumin. And then we just run through and continue orb changing. I think we get an extra ult for Benimaru somewhere in the middle, and we do end up using his attack buff for it, and then, leaving him with an ult in the back for the nuke turn, where you would have the EX Megumin ult, and then the normal Benimaru ult. Anybody else is not nearly as important, though. They're not going to do good damage. They're not on the force. They're not type advantage. Don't worry too much about that. You're only really focusing on Megumin and Benimaru. So, otherwise, the team runs essentially the same. It's just not as powerful. So I don't know if we need to watch this entire clip for you to understand how it works, but we'll keep watching for a little bit longer, and then we'll kind of just fast forward to the very end on the nuke. So, again, full hand. Trainee is here now, so it gives us another converter for special orbs, or special convert, which makes things actually a lot easier. Sometimes Cosma, I don't need 2 greens. I need a green and an orange, but I don't want to use Megumin because she's in the back, so Trainee is nice. And she has the ult rush, so we can keep using that on Megumin. We have, we're down 3 turns, we're already up to 1.5 bars on her. Except this hand, really not the greatest thing in the world, but we can get around it because we have Trainee. And then, because we're playing around funny oneies, we either have Albus, who can change the greens, or we could have brought in Milim to convert that other orb, and we would have been fine. So we have options here. We did use the attack buff from Benimaru, I believe, right here, for the extra damage, because we had 3 orbs for him, and it's cool, it's whatever. But we still have 4 turns left, so we could use the ult here, or we could just kind of save it. But we're more focused on getting Megumin's ult. So we're going to swap you out, we're going to rush the ult again, and then you're going to go back out for Milim. And then, Benimaru will steal that last orb. We have 2 ults, so let's use Benimaru's attack buff again, because now that Megumin has her own ult, we don't need to focus on rushing her. We can then focus on rushing Benimaru, who has the second highest attack stat on the team. Well, actually, he doesn't. funnily enough, I kind of messed that up, but it still works out on its own. So, Albus has a higher attack stat than Benimaru because she's an EX unit and not an OG unit from October of 2021. So we do use the alt rush when we bring Albus in, and it's quite unfortunate that we do that then instead of like right here, because it should have gone to Benimaru. So right here, and it buffs Albus. My mistake, misplay there. But we should, even with this one orb, now that I'm aware of that, we can swap Albus out for Milim, who has a lower attack stat, and then we can put the buff onto Benimaru. And with this one orb, it will get him his alt as well. And we get a full hand. So there we go. We're actually looking really good on stacks of damage, because we're going to get 10 stacks here on a team that you wouldn't really expect it to do 10 stacks. It's got the orb changing potential, but there's some alts you got to play around with. Thankfully, though, we have many orbs for trainee, so that means that Megumin can come in and not miss any of the buffs. So there we go. We have an alt for Benimaru, we have an EX alt for Megumin, bring her in for trainee, and then use the attack buff with Milim, and then we can bring Albus in for the pierce buff and the resistance down, and then we'll use Megumin's alt buff and the orb change, because we can do it, and then we have a full hand. Just make sure to send Megumin's orbs first before the alt, that way you don't waste them. But here we do 74k, Benimaru 122, I know it's fast, 1 million with Megumin, it is very fast, I ran through it, I didn't slow it down, but it is what it is. We get almost a 2 million score right there, which is definitely not 6 million, 6.8 million, but if you only have half the meta, you're only going to do a quarter of the score, to be realistic. So that is the second team. Now let's go really budget friendly, quote unquote. Alright, this is the last team, and it's not a very strong team. We've got Diablo, Protector Diablo from Fount of Wisdom, so he's generic enough that we can use him to increase our damage. Water Rimuru to orb change. Water Shuna to orb change and be the alt buff. Fire Shizu, if you have her, she's an AOE unit, she's got the fire buff. Benimaru makes his comeback again, and then Velzard, who can actually, steal her own orbs, give herself her own attack buff and a small alt buff, so you could actually use her a few times during the run and get a few alts out of her before maxing out with the alt buff from Shuna. So it's a team that is not going to get you a good score at all, but it will get you a score, and that's the whole point. And I believe it still gets an S rank for all intents and purposes. But we also don't have Megumin to start turn 1, so we just have to use Shuna's orb change here, and then run with 5 blues. Thankfully I have protection gauge units, so we can actually get at least 1 stack of Diablo on turn 2. But we're going to leave Velzard in the back to make full use of her orb stealing in case we get 4 and 2 of somebody, which we almost get here. But, I mean, it's still a stacking team, so we don't need to watch all this. We're just going to fast forward, so full hand of blue. We've got 4 Benimarus there that we change into blues. And, oh my gosh, look at all the stacks. Diablo does stack relatively slow, all things considered. So here, let's slow it down here. Or not. Okay. So, we're buffing with a Velzard here, because it's a personal buff. No one else needs to be up front. And then we've also used Shuna's buff, because that hits everybody, and that's bigger than the alt buff that Velzard gives herself. But Velzard still also has that 30% extra attack that no one else is going to give her. So then we're going to use the fire attack plus the fire resistance down because she's skill fused. It'll hit all 3 of her fire units up front, which is good. And then we've got the orb steal, which maybe I should have left because it was a full hand of Shizu's, but I went and stole 2 orbs anyways, so was it a misplay? Maybe, maybe not. But here, we're going to send Shizu first, but it doesn't really matter because no one's piercing unless they naturally do it, so the extra pierce resistance down that she puts on her ult doesn't really have too much effect, except we naturally pierced on Benimaru there. So we're doing okay damage, 159 right there, so up to 1.3, and then we end at, what is it? 1.334. So We went from 6.8 million, well, 6.1 to 6.8 to 2 million to 1.3 million. But, you know, if you don't have any fire units at all, big sad for you, but just use whatever you can and just do damage. If you have the light 3.0 team, use that. If you've got a water 2.0 stacking team, use that. Just use any stacking team, get a score, get the missions done, get the crystals from completing the stage, and move on with your life. But that's it for for boss battle 1. Let's move on to boss battle 2 now. All right, boss battle 2. I'm 14k short, but that's because Nature has a full 120 team, and there's nothing I can do about that. But we're only fighting one enemy, Gazel. He is relatively weak-ish, under 500,000 HP. Not a great attack stat. He does raise it a little bit. He does have physical resistance and crit resistance, and then his own ult damage resistance, which is, you can't get around that. So, it is what it is. But we're going to run the same team. Holy crap, who would have thought that it would have done the same thing, considering we have all the same buffs and we still have a single target nuker? Weird, right? So let's take a look at it. So turn 1, turn 1 is built for a Cosmo orb change, or any green orb changer, which makes it a lot more accessible as far as starting hands is concerned, because the other stage is built for Megumin, and if you don't have her, you're just SOL. So it makes things a little bit easier for you, which is nice. But, you know, it's going to run the same exact way. You're looking for stacks, you're looking to, rush Megumin's ult, but also not rush it too fast, because, again, you want full hands of blues as much as possible. But here, you don't really want ults for anybody else. And if you do, you don't really want to use them willy-nilly, because you don't want to kill Gazel. And we do actually a lot of damage. Like, that was one turn right there, and we've taken off that much HP. Okay, I didn't realize I reset here. Do I reset anywhere else? No? No? Okay. Well, moving on to turn 2. We've done the orb change, we've sent the 6 blues. We got lucky with Violet here, so we're going to bring her in and out for Cosma, send 6 more blues. I don't know why I sent Megumin first, but I did. It is what it is. But then we get pretty fairly lucky here, because we can just bring Violet in for Cosma, and then we have a perfect orb change with Megumin, and we're looking pretty good. We'll bring Shizu back in just for extra damage, because I want to get him low. I don't want to kill him, though. You want his health as low as possible on the nuke turn without him actually dying, because that's where you get all of your overkill damage. Really lucky on this hand. Only 1 green orb, so we can do that really easily with many different units. So we've rushed the ult for Megumin. We had so many orbs Megumin, we were gonna get her ult anyways, so now is a good time as any to start giving herself all that gauge. And then we can use it one more time. She'll be done. She can go away in the back, and then we can only rely on these 4 other units to do damage, to lower him down, and to, get him as low as possible without actually killing him. Really lucky here. Violet will come in. We're going to send this entire hand of Violet, plus Aqua, because it's what we had to do to get a full hand of blues. But she doesn't do that much damage. And it was really fortunate that she didn't take any hits on that ult turn from Gazel. So here, Aqua's ult, not something you really are shooting for, but something you can definitely have. It's just, you gotta be careful. And you're going for turn 8. Is the max turn bonus kill turn for this stage. So orb change here, swap her out, use these, and then send 6 blues, because we were lucky that someone didn't have an orb and we can just bring Megumin in for free. Turn 7, again, you're going to want Megumin up front to make sure she can get all of the buffs. The Shizu ult, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the Aqua ult. Just get as many points as possible. So we need to make sure that this orb change, even though it costs 85, we can make it all back and still have enough to do the big ult, which we thankfully do. So we actually get up to, I think, 10 stacks here. Almost maximum points, but it's certainly enough points to use everything. So let's slow this down now, and we gotta re-get to this part in the video. So, right here. So we will... I think I'm making sure... Checking what he's got. So he's got 3 stacks of Aqua on him already. So 15% Pierce resistance. Now let's full buff. It is turn 8. I want him a little bit lower, so we're going to send a few orbs to make up the difference right there. Because that amount of health left is not what you're looking for. You want that thing as close to 0 as humanly possible. So we're going to buff a little bit. We're going to send a few Shizu orbs just to lower it down. She's going to have quite a few of the buffs. We'll use the AOE debuff. We can. We don't have to. We're not going to nuke with Shizu, so like we don't have to use that buff at all. So here we go. We're going to send, I think, 2 orbs and then the Megumin ult. Or 1. I can't remember. He's still got like 76,000 health left, so... I think, yeah, I'm being indecisive. Yeah, 72,000 health. So I think, I feel like he's got enough to where he can survive 2 hits from Shizu. She doesn't have every single buff, but she's got quite a few. But we end up sending 1, which maybe we could have gotten away with 2 and he would have had like 3 health left, but I didn't want to risk it because this is the best run I've had in a while. So we ended up just going for it. And this gets us our max, or well, our best score that we have so far. And we hit 3.1 million. This stage does have a damage cap of 3.5 million. So if you can somehow hit that, then congrats. The only thing holding you back then is your damage received score. But 3.1 is how much we do for a max score of 150.486. Pretty good. That puts me at number 2 right there. So now let's move on to the less fortunate teams. Alright, budget team number 2 looks almost the same as budget team 2 for boss battle 1. It almost is. We've just got Violet still instead of Trainee. But it's going to run almost the same, and we're bringing Fire Shizu instead of Benimaru because we no longer need his AoE. So we've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buffs going on, but this is assuming again that you only have Megumin and Rimuru from the first banner. But we have Albus here who can cover the orb change for turn 1, the 2 greens, so we're still covered there. You could bring, Water Rimuru if you want, and if you don't have, Albus as an option. But the team runs the same. It's just that now, for this, we don't have anybody rushing Megumin's ult, which can be kind of dangerous. So I believe I have a ult gauge charm on Rimuru now. No, it's something else. Actually, I don't have a charm at all. Hold on. Nope. Okay, here we go. Haha, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, I should have known. I should have known there was another clip in here. It was way too long. Turn 1 orb change. Ignore everything. I put the alt gauge charm on Rimuru now so that Megumin can get, I think, 16% every time we use the protector. So here we get relatively lucky. So 1, and then extra alt gauge, and then 2, and extra alt gauge. Perfect. And then we'll bring Violet in for Shizu, steal all those, use Megumin's orb change. That's a full hand of blues. Bring Albus in. And that's the name of the game. Stacks. Thankfully now Rimuru's helping out the ult rush on Megumin now instead. So we'll kind of just move forward in the fight again because you guys don't need to watch this entire thing. Turn 7 comes in. So we are ready to go with 3 ults. And he still has a decent amount of HP left, right? So I think we do end up sending the Shizu ult here because we gotta lower him down. Yeah. And again, thankfully, someone didn't have an orb, so we could bring in Megumin and not interrupt the full hand. And that gets us down relatively low that we can send a few extra orbs. This is the nuke turn now, so let's slow everything down. We are right here. Okay. So turn 8, we're gonna buff with the attack buff with Milim, the ult buff, the fire buff. We don't really... Well, actually, no, we do. We can benefit from Shizu's second skill because she gives extra pierce power, which, normally Aqua would give, and that would overwrite, but we don't have Aqua anymore. So we can use that, and it'll help our damage. Violet can still put the same debuff on, and then Albus will give us the pierce, and then the pierce resistance down. And then I think we'll just send a few of the Shizu orbs, because she's going to have a lot of buffs active. So we don't want to, again, we don't want to hit too hard here. So we're going to send, I think, one nerfed orb and one normal orb of Shizu, and then the ult. And that gets us just low enough. There we go. So 1, 2, yeah. Very, very close right there. Closer than what we were last time for 2.6 million, which, you know, isn't 3.1 or anything, but it's still a very good score. And gets us 130, which is 20k less than my first score, which is a considerable drop, but it's still a good team, and it's still good damage, and you're still doing 2.6 million. So, not a bad team. There are, if you know, this team isn't the most budget-friendly. You know, EX Albus, Light 3.0 Millim has not come back on a banner, I think. Trainee is in the general pool. Violet also has not returned, so I understand if this team doesn't really get it for you. But we do have one more team, so let's get that one up here. Alright, it's a sad, sad day, but we're going to use Light Shuna for the Pierce, Power, and Stun Strike, so we're bringing Raphael as well to activate both of those. Water Rimuru for the Green Orb change turn 1 and just overall. Water Shuna for the alt buff. Violet as our Fire DPS unit. Even though Gazel does have physical resistance, it's the best we've got. And then Light 3.0 Millim is still here for the orb converting and the attack buff, which technically Violet gives herself 20%, but Millim's giving 45%, so that's a little bit better. So the Pierce Power Stun Strike from Shuna, the alt buff, the Pierce and the alt resistance down from Raphael, and then the attack buff from Millim. The important thing with this team is that you do not use Violet's other skill, because it does give you Pierce, and that's great, but Raphael is already giving you Pierce. You don't need to worry about that. And the other part is giving you crit, and Gazel has quite a bit of crit resistance, which means that you will actually nerf your damage by activating that skill. So do not use the Pierce/crit skill on Violet ever on this stage. Just run with the burn, run with the 20% attack when you can, because it lasts for 2 turns and you can get a little bit extra damage out of it. But this is, you know, outside of using like the full Light 3.0 team, or like praying to God you do enough damage with the Water 2.0 team, there's not a lot of options. Like, you can bring the free-to-play Shuna that's dressed up as Aqua, but without any extra stacking damage capabilities, your team needs to be 100% full of damage supports and orb changers, of which may not be realistic for a free-to-play player, or you're gonna not play the stage, or you're gonna just cry a little bit in you know, sad days down below. I don't know what you can run in place of, you know, as much budget as you can get here, because these are still fairly premium units. Don't get me wrong, it's not lost on me that this is not the most user-friendly team, but it is what it is, and JUBILEE is catered to people who have a number of units to choose from in their box. So, I'm sorry. I guess is the only thing I can say. Because we don't get EX ults here, we don't need to hold on to anything, and we need to lower him down a lot, so we're going to do as much damage as we can in the amount of time that we have. So right here, we're actually going to use a Stun Strike, Pierce Strike early, and with both Raphael and Violet's ults, or just Raphael's ult, never mind, we hold on to Violet. Really? I thought we actually sent Violet. Oh well. We probably would have killed, actually. Okay. So technically Violet still has the stun on, or no, the Pierce on, right? Because that lasts for 2 turns, if I remember correctly. Does it last for 2 turns? Let me check that real fast while we're watching this. Where's... Okay. Raphael's Pierce... No, it's only 1 turn. Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. But turn 7, we have a Shuna ult. We're not going to use it because he's in the red health now, and I just don't want to play around there. So you go out. We're going to get a full hand of blues here, and then next turn we'll nuke with Violet, you know, as best as possible. We'll bring her in for that 1 green that we couldn't change, we didn't want to change. 2 more stacks. We'll send the 5 blues. That does not get us another protector, but because of the traits that I have, it actually does get us the protector. So you may or may not have that, but there's 1 more stack, so we have 9 stacks of Shuna now, and prepare to be utterly disappointed, knowing that we have 9 stacks of Shuna. It's not impressive. It's not great. So let's use the attack buff. Attack buff, there we go, thank you. We'll bring Shuna in for the ult buff, and then we'll use the Pierce and stun and all that, and the ult resistance down. We'll send, I think, he has 54 KHP, so we're going to send some Violet Orbs, get some low, and we do 332,000 damage there, which is just not great. Yeah, 332,051, and that gets us a very, very sad final score of 36,000. But it's still an S rank. Still an S rank. So, those are the teams that I have for you for boss battles 1 and 2. Again, I'm sorry if they're not free-to-play friendly that people were expecting, but there's only so much you can do when you have a large pool of health. You're missing a protector that from the meta. Your options are limited. Use what you can, but hopefully this helps you out. Let me know in the comments, but that's it for me. Take it easy, guys, and I'll see you all later.